Someone has informed him about the world that existed before the black holes appeared. It was a normal world. However, one fateful day, black holes materialized, disrupting the peace of the world. Reports flooded in, detailing the continuous expansion of these black holes. Their unprecedented size caused worsening weather patterns, and the efforts of authorities to handle the crisis were hindered by their sheer numbers. The old force had already tried responding. They were unable to properly rescue the citizens. The situation of the citizens worsened, trapped in a terrifying world that changed the boundaries of normality. This is the story about an abnormal world. These Earth black holes, resembling huge black gates, became doors to an alternate dimension. They communicated with another world. They appeared themselves in the skies, oceans, and even beneath the very ground. It appeared anywhere and everywhere in this world. From these Earth black holes, life forms unlike humans emerged, their existence defying the natural order. Invader beings started massacring humans. The reality of the world started turning into a living nightmare. In the middle of the chaos, a remarkable species emerged, wielding extraordinary abilities such as telekinesis, vocal manipulation, and elemental control. They were known as metahumans. Among them existed individuals immune to death, their bodies capable of enduring serious wounds and organ failure. People who wouldn't die even if their arms were cut or their organs were pierced. They were dubbed the Immortals. Moreover, there were those capable of metamorphosis, assuming the shapes of bears, wolves, and other creatures, a group referred to as shapeshifters. Alongside these extraordinary beings, ordinary humans harnessed unique skills, becoming known as mages. Through the courageous efforts of the metahumans who bravely fought against the invading, menacing creatures from the black holes, a semblance of peace was restored to the world. This harrowing period where the gates appeared was called the Terrible Year. However, as the crisis resolved, the collective attention of the populace turned towards the special species. Rumors circulated about the scary nature of their existence. It was said that they have dangerous molecules, causing a deep sense of fear and causing the need for strict quarantine and management of these special species. These sentiments and the fear towards them led to the separation of special humans from their normal humans. During this complex process, the Immortals have come under the jurisdiction of the government, while the Shapeshifters have conspired with a multinational corporation. The metahumans have established their own organization called Psionic, while the mages hid themselves with magic. And they secretly coexist with ordinary humans, concealing their extraordinary nature. The present day, which occurs 2 decades after the Terrible Year, there are still some special individuals somewhere, hiding that they are special species. At this moment, the protagonist's father calls out to him with an air of urgency, mentioning that he has something important to share. In response, the son is advised to listen attentively without falling a shock. Astonishingly, the father reveals that his son is, in fact, an immortal. Overwhelmed by this unexpected revelation, the son exclaims with surprise. In a calm manner, the father proceeds to explain that he himself is an immortal, speaking that his immortality should have been inherited by his offspring. Curious about the sudden information, the son wonders why his father is telling him this right now, while they are in the middle of purchasing spring onions. In the crowded aisles of a supermarket, the father urges his son to maintain his silence, emphasizing the need to keep their secret hidden from others, including the son's mother, who remains unaware. Otherwise, his father mentions that he might get divorced. The father quickly reassures the son that the quick information is not obvious in the middle of the crowded atmosphere of the store. The son realizes that immortals are expected to possess flawless complexions and aesthetically pleasing features. In response, the father acknowledges that his son may not resemble him physically, but his immortal heritage exists nonetheless. Explaining that the immortality genes awaken on the 24th birthday, the father estimates that the son's awakening event will likely occur tonight around 11 p.m. Wang X suggests that they continue their conversation outside the supermarket, while the cashier is amazed by the father's handsome appearance. As they step outside, Wang X's father admires his son's impressive strength as he effortlessly carries all the groceries in one hand, bestowing praise upon him. His father ponders aloud, mentioning that the immortals are born with low strength and questioning whether his son's exercising is the reason behind his unusual strength. With a lighthearted laugh, Wang X thinks about how he rarely engages in rigorous workouts. He thinks how his unusual strength is probably a result of that, as he thinks of his second secret while walking alongside his dad. But then he thinks how that is actually his first secret. He has something he has kept secret even before he learned he was an immortal today. Entering the room, Wang X's mother approaches his father with affection, asking if he remembered to bring the garlic. There is a moment of playful awkwardness as they exchange flirtatious kisses and giggles, abruptly interrupted by Wang X's reminder that their son is watching. As his mother instructs him to organize the groceries, Wang X's thoughts drift to the realization that his mother is a shapeshifter. He recalls how she revealed her extraordinary ability to him 2 years ago, informing him that he, too, possesses the power of transformation. She revealed that shapeshifters typically awaken at the age of 18, speaking that his own awakening may occur tonight. Gwang-ik appreciates the significance of her words, thinking back on the surprise he felt when he first learned of his unique nature. His mother instructed him to keep this secret hidden from his father, something he has faithfully followed. Currently, he busies himself with organizing the groceries. His father approaches him, asking about the gift he wants for his birthday. Gwang-ik casually responds that he doesn't need anything. Hearing this, his father asks if he really doesn't want anything, telling him to not regret his choice later. He assures his parents, speaking that he is already grateful for their gift of giving birth to him. Hearing this, his mother and father praises him for his pretty speech, likening him to his father. Gwang-ik's father acknowledges the resemblance in their personalities, attributing it to his mother's influence. In the middle of this heartwarming exchange, Gwang-ik thinks about the unique composition of his family, having an immortal father and a shapeshifter mother, and recognizes his own exceptional nature. Yet he wonders why both of them hide their true identities from each other. As night falls and Gwang-ik lies on his bed, he gazes at his cloak, thinking how it will soon be 11:00 p.m. As Gwang-ik carries the groceries, his mind lingers on his father's revelation that he will awaken as an immortal at precisely 11:00 p.m. He seizes the opportunity to ask whether the awakening process inflicts any pain. In response, his father reassures him that it was a tolerable experience for him personally. He clearly recalls the sensation of his blood gradually warming up, only to cool down soon after. The father elucidates that once a slight chill sets in, the 5 senses become markedly sharper than ever before, assuring Gwang-ik that there is no pain involved. Curiosity gnaws at Gwang-ik as he ponders the stark contrast between his imminent immortality and his mother's mere humanity. He questions whether his own awakening as an immortal is truly plausible. His father confirms with certainty that it will indeed transpire, emphasizing that the blood of an immortal possesses a density far greater than that of a human. Resting on his bed, Gwang-ik thinks about the possibility of awakening as an immortal when he already experienced the transformative process of becoming a shapeshifter. Doubt tugs at his thoughts, and he ventures to share his concerns with his father, referring to him as Ted. As Gwang-ik absent-mindedly scratches his face, he wonders if he should simply drift off to sleep, thinking the words of an unidentified individual who once stated that there were no invaders or black holes. Night progresses, and suddenly, Gwang-ik tumbles out of his bed, his entire body quivering uncontrollably. Agonizingly, he clutches his head, seeking to alleviate the pain as sweat trickles down his body, exacerbating his torment. This is the chronicle of Gwang-ik's extraordinary existence within an ostensibly ordinary world. 2 years ago, Gwang-ik stands before the mirror, seeing his body and marveling at the sculpted physique with well-defined muscles. He ponders how his awakening as a shapeshifter brought about such a significant improvement. Suddenly, the bathroom door swings open and his mother calls out, surprising him. Quickly attempting to cover his body, he questions why she barged in, only to receive a reply that she merely wanted to check if he was alright and that he looks splendid. She then asks him how it feels to be a shapeshifter, to which he responds, noting that he feels a surge of energy and heightened senses, particularly in his hearing and smell. Confused, he asks about the pain he mentioned earlier, not recalling what he was talking about. She explains that during his awakening, he endured the excruciating process of losing all body hair and feeling his muscles tearing apart, assuring him that such agony won't be repeated. Relieved, he expresses his aversion to experiencing such pain again. Returning to the present, Gwang-ik lies on the floor beside his bed, his body drenched in sweat, racked by intense pain. He clutches his head, attempting to control the anguish, cursing aloud. The next day, while gazing into the mirror, he pinches his cheek, realizing that it still hurts just as much, even though he is now immortal. In terms of appearance, nothing seems to have changed. Suddenly, a voice from outside interrupts his thoughts, causing him to cover his ears due to his heightened hearing. He acknowledges that his senses have become exceptionally sharp. Trying to calm himself, he recalls his previous experiences of controlling his body as a shapeshifter. He consciously convinces himself that his ears are far away, effectively resolving the issue. Letting out a sigh of relief, he leans over the sink, thinking how his awakening as an immortal now feels complete. Glancing at his reflection in the mirror, he wonders if he will be able to conceal his newfound immortality from his parents. As his parents call out, asking where he is and asking him to come eat, he assures them that he's coming to the table. Surprised by the numbers of food laid out for breakfast, he takes his seat, feeling grateful but also burdened. His mother explains that she can make more if it's not enough and asks him to let her know. Seeing the interaction, he realizes how his family shares an unusual dynamic. He recalls hearing that shapeshifters require more energy than the average person, and he ponders whether it applies to other special species as well. Suddenly, his father addresses him, informing him to prepare for the civil service exam, leaving both him and his mother taken aback. His mother questions the sudden decision, causing his father to explain the opportunity that has arisen. She asks about the nature of the opportunity, expressing her concern about him entering the workforce so early. His father explains that college isn't crucial, emphasizing the importance of skills, and reveals that he himself is a civil servant. While his mother acknowledges that being a civil servant isn't a bad choice, she simply doesn't want to see him confined to a narrow path at such an early stage. She mentions the existence of gashiwons in Korea, which are small accommodations for individuals preparing for important exams. In response, his father dismisses the idea of Gwang-ik staying in a hostel for preparation, saying that their son is smart. He assures Gwang-ik that it would be better for him to pursue a government-related career path. With sweat trickling down his face, Gwang-ik thinks about his parents' different perspectives. He thinks how immortals often gravitate towards government positions, realizing that his father may have intended to steer him in that direction. However, he realizes that his mother likely has an alternative plan in mind. Recalling his visits to the gym with his mother, Gwang-ik clearly remembers his astonishment at struggling to complete a single pull-up before his shapeshifter awakening. However, after the transformation, he effortlessly performs 15 pull-ups without breaking a sweat. His mother enlightens him, revealing that shapeshifters possess 3 times the strength of an average individual. She adds that there is a reason behind her remarkable physical prowess. Pausing for a moment, his mother explains that apart from sheer physical strength, shapeshifters possess heightened instincts. These instincts, she explains, often dominate their thoughts and decision-making, exerting a powerful influence throughout their lives. Gwang-ik admits that he doesn't perceive this dominance at present, causing his mother to draw a parallel. She points out that the current situation mirrors the influence of his instincts, highlighting the potential challenges he may face when navigating the real world. As she rises beneath the chin-up bar, his mother emphasizes the importance of mastering control over these instincts. She believes it is crucial for him to attend college and secure employment in a company, surprising Gwang-ik with this suggestion. Explaining further, his mother reveals that his grandfather possesses connections in an industry that specializes in working with shapeshifters. Thus, she proposes that Gwang-ik enroll in a regular college, which would facilitate his entry into that industry. She assures him that he would receive fundamental training for shapeshifters within that setting. Gwang-ik pauses, feeling the need to interject and express his desire to actively participate in the conversation rather than passively listening to his parents' discussion. As Gwang-ik sets down his phone, he thinks about his own dreams and realizes that there is indeed something he wishes to pursue. Thinking back on this revelation, he acknowledges that he has never shared this desire with his parents. Speaking up, he expresses his desire to join UDT, the Korean equivalent of the SEALs. The revelation surprises his parents, eliciting a confused expression from his mother that fills him with trepidation. While his father thinks about offering support, his mother opines that Gwang-ik may not have deeply considered his decision. In response, Gwang-ik insists that he is now 20 years old and capable of thinking like an adult. An ominous shadow falls over his mother's face as she clenches her fist, causing Gwang-ik's anxiety to heighten further, visible through the perspiration that beads on his forehead. His father, still lost in thought, finally vocalizes his opinion that being a soldier isn't a bad path to take. Hearing his father's response, his mother expresses surprise and asks Gwang-ik if he's pursuing it solely for appearances, finding it unusual. Gwang-ik's face displays a hint of awkwardness as he admits that his decision is influenced by such factors as well. His father reassures them, stating that it's actually a positive thing. He explains that it would be odd for a young man approaching 20 to have already made up his mind about serving his country. Interrupting his father's words, his mother interjects, addressing his father and suggesting that the military. Cutting her off, his father assures her that it's fine. He explains, mentioning that soldiers don't necessarily get deployed to dangerous places like Somalia to combat pirates. He suggests that Gwang-ik can lead a fulfilling life after training and assignments, and since he would eventually have to fulfill his military duty at some point, it would be advantageous for him to enter as an officer. Agreeing with her husband, his mother acknowledges that if he says so, then it must be true. Gazing at his sincere father, Gwang-ik thinks about how skilled his father is at influencing his mother. He then musters the courage to ask his parents if he can pursue this path. His mother responds positively, stating that he can, but not immediately. Gwang-ik nods, acknowledging that he needs to finish college first. His father interjects, emphasizing that he should also take the civil service exam. Gwang-ik wonders if his father is being supported by an academy specializing in civil service exam preparation. His father explains that if he passes the exam, he can postpone his military service and enter later. Alternatively, if he chooses not to join the military, he can explore opportunities in the defense industry. He adds that going in as an officer might be considered a bonus. Wang Ik considers his father's words, finding it logically challenging but realizing that if anyone can make it happen, it's his father, given his government connections. With determination, Wang Ik picks up a piece of food, thinking about his future. His father advises him to keep his weekends free and mentions a young tutor named Jiangxi who will provide intensive guidance. He urges Wang Ik to dedicate himself to studying during that time. Wang Ik agrees, expressing his willingness to do so. In the ensuing moment, both Wang Ik and his mother experience a sudden realization, comprehending the significance of the place his father had mentioned earlier. In the next scene, Wang Ik finds himself on a bus journey through the countryside, his thoughts consumed by his father's words. His father had revealed that he knew someone residing in this very area, working on a farm, content to remain removed from city life. Looking out the window, Wang Ik thinks about the exceptional qualities of this person, pondering the reasons behind their need to travel all the way here for tutoring. He muses that he never anticipated embarking on the path of civil service examination. As he gazes down at his phone, Wang Ik acknowledges his true dreams, realizing that being a soldier was not his ultimate goal. His mind drifts to Earth Whitehall, a gate that materialized following the formation of the International Government Coalition and the establishment of the Old Force. While black holes herald the emergence of menacing creatures from the other side, Whitehall represents a passage through which humanity can venture, exploring the realm known as the Other Side. Within this world lie unfamiliar species of flora and fauna as well as abundant untapped resources. Although the Earth's black hole crisis have become a relic of the past, humanity still grapples with internal conflicts, battling for control over these newfound resources. Directing his gaze outside the window, Wang Ik thinks about how shapeshifters predominantly fill the ranks of those dispatched to these battles. Their exceptional physical strength and prowess render them formidable combatants. He acknowledges that his mother vehemently opposes his involvement in such confrontations. Consequently, he compromises, accepting his mother's wishes, while also pursuing his own aspiration to fight by becoming a soldier. Originally possessing a secret desire, he wished to contribute to a greater cause. In another scene, an individual talks over the phone, addressing their senior to confirm whether their son was genuinely sent here. Upon comprehending the situation, the person on the phone assures their senior that they will take charge. They confirm that they will not show any leniency simply because Wang Ik is the son of their superior, dispelling any concerns. They vow to diligently educate and guide him. Shortly after, Wang Ik disembarks from the bus. In the next scene, Wang Ik stands in front of his father's acquaintance. The person, with curiosity in their eyes, asks Wang Ik what he is. Wang Ik begins introducing himself as his father's son, but before he can finish, the individual interjects, stating that Wang Ik is an immortal. They marvel at Wang Ik's well-built physique, wondering how he came to possess such a strong physique. Wang Ik, considering his answer, suggests that it may be due to his mixed bloodline. Hearing this, the person remarks that immortals are quite rare, especially considering who Wang Ik's father is, and ponders how human blood could mix with that. Wang Ik explains that it's because his mother is also a special being. Hearing this response, the person comments that Wang Ik is a unique individual. They then turn the conversation towards their purpose for meeting. Curious, Wang Ik asks where they are going. The person replies somewhat cryptically, questioning Wang Ik's confusion. They clarify that they are there to undergo training. Following his father's instructions, Wang Ik arrives at the location where he will prepare for the civil service exam, a remote mountain area in Gyeonggi province. Seeing the person in front of him, Wang Ik speculates that this individual might be his tutor. He notes how the person's face appears clean and well-kept, hinting at their immortality. The person suddenly asks if there is a temple in the area, causing Wang Ik to question the relevance of the inquiry. Confused, Wang Ik wonders why they are heading towards the mountain region. However, the person leading the way stops abruptly, mentioning that they have reached their destination. Wang Ik gazes at the dilapidated and simple building, feeling a mixture of surprise and curiosity. The person mentions that they once attempted to cut their own wrists with a knife and witnessed how quickly the wound healed. They emphasize the importance of understanding the concept behind the healing abilities within their bodies. Wang Ik and his father's friend agree that even if they don't fully comprehend the intricacies, they recognize the basics. A healthy immortal possesses robust healing power, and heightened sensitivity allows them to quickly perceive and manage pain. They explain that through training in health and sense, healing power can be enhanced. Wang Ik finds himself in agreement as he realizes that without understanding these fundamental principles, he wouldn't grasp the essence of their training. The person then asks if Wang Ik has any questions. Wang Ik admits his confusion, particularly regarding the significance of a particular object sticking out of the ground behind him. The individual instructs Wang Ik eagerly, asking him to push his limits and learn how to control his immortal body. Impatiently, they tell him to run faster, aware that his legs are on the verge of giving out. Despite his breathlessness, Wang Ik's eyes reflect unwavering determination. In the next moment, blood-curdling screams fill the air as Wang Ik endures excruciating pain, wounded by numerous knives. The person nonchalantly sets aside a cup of coffee, casually remarking that Wang Ik shouldn't be so quick and should prepare himself for relentless pursuit. They express confidence that Wang Ik won't stop or relax, continuing to elude his fallen adversaries. Wang Ik's agonized grunts mingle with his curses, yearning for someone to end his suffering swiftly. Approaching Wang Ik, the person offers an intentional respite, assuring him that he managed to dispatch several opponents. They highlight Wang Ik's exceptional abilities that left the other combatants utterly helpless. Surprised, the person observes that Wang Ik's injuries heal at an accelerated rate. Cautioning him, they explain that he shouldn't fear the blades and should intentionally step on them, using his own feet as weapons. They emphasize the importance of applying deliberate force and severing his opponent's limbs. Wang Ik's face contorts in anger upon hearing these words, deeming the instruction absurd. Meanwhile, the teacher reprimands him for overreacting, shouting for him to continue running. In the middle of enduring pain, Wang Ik continues to run, its cries echoing through the air. The person keenly observes Wang Ik, pondering the enigma that he presents. Taking a brief respite while his injuries gradually heal, the person approaches Wang Ik, recognizing him as an immortal who cannot be killed by such means. They firmly command Wang Ik to rise and resume running. In the middle of their interaction, Wang Ik asks how much longer he must endure this torment, to which the person responds that he must undergo a shock. It is through experiencing this shock that Wang Ik's pain threshold will elevate, granting him greater resilience. The person explains that the blade setup prepares Wang Ik for the intensity and panic he might experience on the battlefield, specifically to overcome fear and withstand concussions. Wang Ik, getting up, asks if there's no other way to train aside from this. The person then asks how fast Wang Ik can run 50 meters. Wang Ik estimates around 6 seconds. The person clarifies that the distance is indeed 50 meters, and if Wang Ik can complete it within 6 seconds, they will proceed with the training. Wang Ik, confirming the challenge, asks for confirmation that it must be completed within 6 seconds. The person confirms, and Wang Ik, putting on his hood and tightening his jersey, assures the person that he won't back down later. Wang Ik thinks about the person's statement about running 50 meters in 6 seconds, realizing it's achievable if he blocks out the pain and runs at his maximum speed. In the next moment, he bursts forward, maneuvering through the blades, leaving bloody footprints in the sand. Even the person is surprised, eyes widening at Wang Ik's feet. After completing the blade setup, Wang Ik believes he finished within the required time. Panting and attempting to control his breath, Wang Ik notices sweat streaming down the person's face. The person, acknowledging Wang Ik's achievement, exclaims that he's an interesting individual, fueling Wang Ik's determination. The person insists that he runs it again, to which Wang Ik asks if he didn't make it within 6 seconds. The person retorts that time doesn't matter. Despite the person's response, Wang Ik internally chastises himself for not meeting the expectation. Moments later, the person announces that they will commence the second phase of training. Handing Wang Ik a small object, the person instructs him to hold it. Wang Ik questions if it's a dog collar, feeling uneasiness. The person clarifies that it's needed for the second training and tells Wang Ik to place it around his neck. Reluctantly, Wang Ik complies, voicing his unease and asking what they are going to do. The person responds that they will be conducting breath-holding training. Hearing this, Wang Ik's adrenaline surges and he questions if it's what he thinks it is. The person confirms, holding up a remote and explaining that when he presses a button, Wang Ik's air supply will be restricted. The person instructs Wang Ik not to undo it until told to do so, and to try again even if he feels tired. The person asserts that since Wang Ik has already braved the field of knives, he shouldn't simply retreat now. With a swift motion, they remove their own necklace and toss it to the ground, suggesting that Wang Ik should venture underwater and hold his breath. The person asks if Wang Ik believes that alone would suffice. Furthermore, they inform him that this training also involves enduring strangulation. If Wang Ik were to pass out during the exercise, it would mark the end, just as with the blade setup. The focus lies on resisting unconsciousness. Thinking back on the aftermath of the disastrous year and the war against the special species, the person thinks about the idea of normal individuals learning how to confront these creatures. However, they question whether the reverse holds true. Wang Ik, hidden beneath his breath, muses that the person should avoid making statements suggesting that the world has improved due to such experiences. Nonetheless, Wang Ik raises the question of passing conditions. The person casually responds that there are no specific conditions, but Gwang-ik should strive to remain conscious for at least 5 minutes. After considering the time frame, Gwang-ik agrees. The person suggests that Gwang-ik refrain from attempting to forcibly remove the necklace or pilfer the remote unless he wants a gaping hole in his chest. With a momentary pause, the person acknowledges that this training also serves their own purposes, aligning with Gwang-ik's journey. Gwang-ik expresses his comprehension, and the person proceeds to ask if he is prepared. Gwang-ik, resolute, confirms his readiness. With a nod of confirmation, the person taps the remote, initiating the exercise. In the next moment, Gwang-ik kneels on the floor, his fingers desperately grasping at the collar constricting his neck. His entire body trembles as he attempts to breathe, feeling the grip tighten. Suddenly, the person standing behind him swiftly strikes him with a stick, scolding him not to remove the collar and insisting that he can endure it. The person remarks that if Gwang-ik can't handle it, he can simply pass out. Meanwhile, Gwang-ik inwardly curses and wonders when this torturous ordeal will finally end, realizing that 5 minutes had already passed long ago. Gradually, Gwang-ik's consciousness begins to blur, questioning if he has reached his limit. In an instant, Gwang-ik's eyes snap open, fiery determination in his gaze. The person, taken aback, looks at the remote, confused as to why it turned off. They mutter to themselves, considering if the battery died. Just as Gwang-ik removes the collar, it falls from his neck of its own accord. Filled with a mix of relief and frustration, Gwang-ik shouts out, exclaiming how close he came to death. The person calmly responds, assuring him that he wouldn't have died. Barney interjects, firmly stating that they won't repeat this exercise simply because Gwang-ik didn't pass out. He argues that Gwang-ik definitely endured the full 5 minutes. The person counters, declaring that Gwang-ik actually lasted an impressive 12 minutes and 47 seconds. Upon hearing this, Gwang-ik remains momentarily surprised, his eyes widening in astonishment. He recalls that the person had initially mentioned the record was 8 minutes, causing him to question himself. Trying to form words, Gwang-ik notices a smile on the person's face and remarks that the person shouldn't look at him as if he were a child discovering something new. Moments later, the person suggests they rest for the day and emphasizes the importance of eating. Gwang-ik asks if the person will feed him. In response, the person explains that it is inefficient to work on an empty stomach and emphasizes the need for good health. Gwang-ik asks if there's anything he can do to assist, but the person insists that he should simply remain seated, noting that Gwang-ik lacks cooking skills. To Gwang-ik's surprise and trepidation, a suspicious-looking, purple, and intimidating plate of food is placed in front of him. The person instructs him to eat. Gazing at this peculiar creation, Gwang-ik finds himself both amazed and apprehensive, questioning the nature of the dish. The person then asks Gwang-ik if he truly wants to know. Gwang-ik hesitates momentarily before replying that he doesn't. Under the night sky, Gwang-ik stands by a stream, rinsing his clothes. He thinks about the need to improve his cooking skills, resolving to learn from his mother upon returning home. However, he realizes that before that, he should seek guidance from his father. Despite the desire to call his father immediately, he is reminded that phones are prohibited and his own device has been confiscated. Exiting the river's embrace, he expresses fatigue and yearns for a good night's sleep. Inside his room, Gwang-ik is taken aback by the sight of a mosquito buzzing before him. Swiftly, he catches the insect and calls out to his teacher, questioning whether there is no mosquito net available. The teacher dismisses the bothersome nature of the bugs, explaining that they will enter regardless. Gwang-ik's response is a resolute confirmation, acknowledging the inconvenience as he settles down on the floor. Both teacher and student lie in silence, the teacher remarking that this exercise is meant to desensitize their tactile perception. Initially, discomfort may hinder sleep, but with time, it should become more manageable. The following morning, the teacher instructs Gwang-ik to wait for breakfast, which arrives in the form of unappealing and unappetizing fare. Despite the unsavory appearance, Gwang-ik expresses gratitude for the sustenance. As the teacher consumes his own meal, he reveals that immortals require substantial energy intake, asking Gwang-ik to eat. With no alternative, Gwang-ik complies and queries the day's training regimen. The teacher replies, stating that they will be practicing cliff diving. Hearing this, Gwang-ik remarks on the audacity of such a challenge. The teacher elucidates, mentioning that it includes holding one's breath mid-air and mastering sensory control in preparation for the approaching impact. The teacher emphasizes the importance of immortals being careful of shock and the tremendous force that can render them unconscious. Continuing, the teacher highlights another critical aspect, preserving mobility when faced with limb injuries such as severed legs or forearms. Offering an example, the teacher warns that if an opponent targets the head, it can render the immortal incapacitated. Furthermore, the teacher cautions Gwang-ik to exercise heightened vigilance when confronted with knives surpassing the dangers posed by guns. He advises remaining alert to the presence of claymores and mines as well. Gwang-ik acknowledges the teacher's words, understanding the gravity of the training's significance. It becomes evident that all these examples are outdated, and in modern times the outcome is different. The teacher notices Wang Ik picking at his food and urges him to eat so they can proceed with training. Wang Ik reluctantly agrees and finishes his meal. They wrap up their training session and take the bus home. The next day on the bus, Wang Ik calls his dad, seeking reassurance. He asks his father if this is the right path for him. His father asks if something happened, and Wang Ik explains that the person made him jump off a mountain. His father assures him that it's alright as Wang Ik isn't immortal and won't easily die. He encourages Wang Ik to be tough with his body and discover his limits. Wang Ik reflects that he has indeed found that his body is resilient, never once losing consciousness. His father praises him, praising his performance, and advises him to rest well at home. Wang Ik then tries to broach the topic of the exam he's preparing for, but he is interrupted as someone calls out to his father for help. His father informs Wang Ik that he has to end the call and promises to talk later. The call disconnects, and Wang Ik thinks that hearing the news wouldn't change anything at this moment. He decides to follow his father's advice and rest for the day. He plans to take a refreshing shower, indulge in some gaming on his 5 pounds, enjoy a delicious dinner prepared by his mother, and sleep soundly in his mosquito-free room for around 12 hours. Feeling content, Wang Ik thinks about this perfect rest plan with a sense of happiness. As Wang Ik arrives home, his mother instructs him to postpone showering and accompany her somewhere. His eagerness turns to surprise as he realizes his meticulously crafted plan has been shattered. His mother discloses that he had informed his father about his intention to continue studying for college. Consequently, she has packed his bag, ensuring he has everything he needs for studying on the go. Wang Ik is taken aback to discover a duffel bag awaiting him. His mother explains that she found a tutor in the nearby neighborhood who will provide accommodation for just 2 nights. This unexpected turn leaves Wang Ik feeling uneasy. While they enter a building, his mother assures him that she will return to pick him up in 2 days. As they part ways, Wang Ik questions if he should introduce himself to the tutor. Confused, his mother reassures him, asserting that it's unnecessary. Curious by her response, Wang Ik asks what she means. Just as the elevator doors begin to close, his mother imparts that intelligence alone is insufficient and emphasizes the need for a strong physique. In that moment, a wave of realization washes over Wang Ik, leaving him to comprehend that his future does not involve traditional college studies. A silence ensues, followed by an eruption of manic laughter as Wang Ik curses his entire family. As the elevator door opens, Wang Ik steps out, unsure why his mother sent him here. The coach reminds him that his mom mentioned he study for 2 days straight and expresses concern that his body will suffer if he only focuses on studying. Wang Ik is confused as to why his mom sent him here, given that those 2 days felt like hell to him. He realizes he can't reveal the truth, thinking how unfair it is. However, since he was young, his mother's guiding principle was clear. If you don't listen, your body needs to be heard, and you must take responsibility for your actions. Living by these values for 20 years, Wang Ik has internalized them. He understands that rebelling against his mom won't work in this situation either, evident from the teacher's expression. The teacher hands Wang Ik a strap and instructs him to take it. Wang Ik, accustomed to receiving such devices, asks what it is. The teacher explains that it's a device for measuring various parameters and tells him to attach one to his wrist and ankle. As Wang Ik secures the devices, he asks if the teacher is going to train him. The teacher clarifies that he will be tested first. She points towards a site and suggests he turns his attention there, mentioning a treadmill. In the following scene, Wang Ik starts running on the treadmill while the teacher stands beside him. She mentions hearing that he didn't train on his own and then remarks aloud that he's mediocre. Assessing his heart rate, she concludes that his physical condition is satisfactory. However, she questions whether that's truly all he can accomplish at his current level. Hearing her words, Wang Ik ponders why he is being pushed so relentlessly, depriving him of leisure time at his beloved 5 pounds. Seeing his measurements and running speed, he notes that his teacher deems him lazy. She explains that in today's world, one can attain almost anything they desire. Wang Ik wonders if they are around the same age, but realizes that immortals and shapeshifters age at a slower pace, leading him to speculate if she appears younger than she truly is. Curious, he asks how long he must continue running. The teacher instructs him not to stop, surprising Wang Ik. Cracking her neck, she confirms that they will gradually enhance his physical capabilities, rejuvenating his entire body. Wang Ik, taken aback, interjects that he doesn't need a second mother. Amused, the teacher laughs, suggesting that his resistance may stem from him being her son, playfully insinuating a resemblance. Wang Ik, however, asserts that he is not joking. During the nighttime, still inside the building, Wang Ik perseveres, running on the treadmill. The teacher, her gaze firm, urges him to persist without pause. She remarks that even her grandmother would not tire under these circumstances. Wang Ik continues running, showcasing his endurance for 14 hours, 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Thinking back on the requirement to run throughout the entire night without respite, he realizes that even during his training as an immortal, there were moments of rest. The teacher interjects, emphasizing that such intervals are for amateurs only, speaking of the need for continuous exertion. The teacher switches on the TV in front of Wang Ik and instructs him to watch while running. She explains that these are the stretching exercises they will be doing later and urges him to memorize them. As he listens to her words and observes the seemingly impossible bending of the human body, Wang Ik wonders how such flexibility is even attainable. He ponders if having a stiff body can truly be a disadvantage, although he would like to ask this question when he's not out of breath. Even with his shapeshifter body, running continuously for 14 hours leaves him breathless. The teacher once again asks Wang Ik for the time and he shouts out, 14 hours to 10 minutes, diligently keeping track in case he is questioned. He must commit the video in front of him to memory and listen to the teacher's explanations simultaneously. Wang Ik acknowledges the brutality of this training, but embraces a newfound determination. He recalls the training from the past 2 days where the male teacher emphasized the importance of his senses. The teacher recognized Wang Ik's proficiency in blocking senses, but stressed that it wasn't enough. Wang Ik learned to clear his mind of the senses he wanted to suppress while sharpening another sense. In essence, he needs to master the art of multitasking his senses. Running and panting, Wang Ik thinks to himself that timing and memorizing the movements from the video while listening to the teacher is like juggling 4 different tasks. However, running is automatic, leaving his body to handle that aspect, while he focuses on absorbing the teachings in video. He finds that, aside from sensory training and timing, performing the other tasks isn't too challenging. In the next scene, we witness Wang Ik multitasking while still running on the treadmill, continuously counting to himself. Just as he reaches 59, he exclaims, 24 hours. He stops running as the treadmill shuts off, and with relief, he declares that it's finally over. The female teacher, seeing his words, checks her phone and sees that it is precisely 24 hours and 1 second. With a smile, she compliments Wang Ik on his remarkable mental agility. She then advises him to loosen up his body, emphasizing the importance of flexibility. Hearing her words, Wang Ik reluctantly accepts the challenge, understanding its importance. The two of them stand facing each other without a trace of hesitation. The female trainer asks if he remembers the video she instructed him to watch attentively, assuring him that she will now demonstrate. However, as she begins, Wang Ik's eyes widen in astonishment. Witnessing the trainer's exceptional flexibility, he can't help but exclaim in surprise, perceiving such fluidity in her movements as almost unfair. Encouraged by the trainer, Wang Ik kneels on the floor, ready to attempt the maneuver. In his earnestness, he strains himself, attempting to arch his back backward. However, he grunts in pain, unable to push his body any further. Seeing his struggle, the female trainer advises against overexertion, explaining that flexibility takes time. She elucidates their method, progressively increasing the range of motion through repetition, essentially tearing and repairing the muscles to enhance flexibility. A realization dawns upon Wang Ik: he doesn't have to progress gradually. Immortals possess the ability to heal rapidly after sustaining injuries, allowing him to endure momentary pain for the sake of rapid progress. Empowered by this insight, he gathers his resolve. Without hesitation, he forcefully bends his back backward, surprising even the trainer, who exclaims in astonishment. Seeing his trembling body, she anxiously asks if he is all right. Trembling himself, Wang Ik musters a response. Despite her initial concerns, the trainer continues to scold Wang Ik, cautioning him against pushing too hard. She curiously asks who taught him such audacity, remarking on his intriguing nature. Overwhelmed by the intensity of the exercise, Wang Ik musters the courage to ask for her assistance, requesting help to stand up. In the next scene, the female trainer declares that it's enough for the day and suggests they eat. They gaze at the massive piece of meat before them, and Wang Ik jokingly asks if they're devouring an entire pig. The trainer confirms that each of them will be eating 1 pig, clarifying that they don't eat an entire pig individually. She explains that eating is also part of the training, building up energy reserves for future intense workouts. Wang Ik ponders if she is a bear preparing for hibernation with such a huge amount of food. In the following scene, both of them hungrily devour their portions of meat. The trainer advises Wang Ik not to clean his plate entirely, but just check it, as their training will continue beyond the 2 days per week. Wang Ik nods, still enjoying his meal, acknowledging that roasted meat with seasoning tastes delicious. He suspects that his enjoyment may be due to running the entire day without eating. The trainer instructs him to finish every bit, warning that leaving any behind will result in death. Their meal, the trainer announces that she's heading inside and instructs Wang Ik to wash up and get some sleep. In the next scene, Wang Ik sits in a well-furnished room and reflects that it's much better than sleeping forest playing mosquito. He thinks using his phone and considers calling his mom. In the next moment, he calls his mother's number, and her voice greets him on the line. She asks how he's doing, if he's okay. Wang wonders if his mom is concerned about him after sending him to this place. He reassures her that he's fine, to which his mom expresses her repeated advice not to go easy on him just because they know each other. She's worried, even though Wang is concerned about his well-being. Of his mom's words, Wang is unsure of what to think. He realizes that his mother isn't actually worried about him, but rather concerned that the trainer might go easy on him. She instructs him to tell the trainer to be harsher if she's being too lenient, and she asks if he understands. After the call ends abruptly, Guangek is left thinking about the situation. He wonders why his mother is not worried about her own son. Suddenly, a realization dawns on him about the training. If an immortal's training is considered intense, then a shapeshifter's training is truly brutal. It's about lifting weights, pushing limits, and surpassing oneself. Guangek thinks about the devices and electronic applications used in the shapeshifter training, recalling the device that was used to strangle him. He concludes that the essence of shapeshifter training lies in knowing and exceeding one's limits, while also acknowledging the 3 times greater strength of a shapeshifter compared to an average adult male. The teacher beckons Guangek forward, instructing him to carry a small beam and follow her. Surprised, Guangek complies and she commands him to run with it. Gazing at the beam in front of him, he wonders if he truly needs to run over it, thinking if this is another one of the teacher's challenging setups, reminiscent of the blade setup. The teacher emphasizes the importance of balance and maintaining his center of gravity, asking him to rely on his reflexes. Curious if it will actually work, Wang Ik queries her, to which she responds that he must keep at it until it does. As they proceed, Wang Ik notes the basement floor's narrow corners and its length spanning only half the width of his foot. He asks if it's okay to fall, to which she assures him that the risk of injury from a 3-meter fall is low. However, she advises him to be prepared for falls regardless, emphasizing that protecting his body is the top priority for shapeshifters. Wang Ik wonders if the teacher is even paying attention to his progress, assuming she is focused on some program or other. She explains the disadvantage of sustaining injuries on the battlefield, as shapeshifters' bodies do not heal as quickly as immortals. Inwardly thinking about his options, Wang Ik concludes that he should just get it over with, acknowledging that as an immortal he will recover swiftly even with broken bones. Determined, he prepares to run, disregarding the possibility of falling. Suddenly, he propels himself forward on the beam, surprising his female teacher. As he runs, Guangek becomes more attuned to his surroundings, heightening his senses. He feels the pressure of his running shoes against the beam, achieving a sense of balance. While most shapeshifters possess remarkable reflexes, they pale in comparison to the immortal's specialized sensory abilities. In a moment of realization, he discovers that he can do it, finding it oddly enjoyable. Furthermore, there is no risk of blades cutting his foot. Excitedly, he shouts to his teacher that he has successfully completed the task. She then instructs him to go back and forth multiple times, and Guangek calmly agrees, channeling his determination towards the beam. The teacher thinks about the beam's dimensions, 4 centimeters in width and 50 centimeters in length, marveling at Guangek's flawless completion of the task without stumbling even once. She then makes a call and informs him that she is raising the difficulty level. Now, instead of a beam, there is a sturdy piece of thick wire in front of him. Guangek is surprised, gazing at the fire ahead. He turns to his teacher and asks if he is really supposed to run on this wire. She confirms that this setup is called the single-line setup. The wooden board was just a warm-up, and she believes that despite his initial messiness, he possesses good physical attributes and a sense of balance. She advises him to be careful when falling since his skin could rip if he grabs onto the wire. Guangek asks if he has to run while carrying the weight once again. The teacher clarifies that he will start without any additional weight. Hearing this, Guangek realizes that he must first get used to running on the wire. With determination in his eyes, he acknowledges that this challenge is not as daunting as the training for immortals, but it still poses a high level of difficulty. In the next moment, he calmly steps onto the wire. He acknowledges that although it is harder and more complex, the wire is sturdy and stable. There's no cliff to fall from, no hurricane blowing. Plus, there's a mattress on the floor below. Guangek realizes that there is nothing to fear and decides to start running. However, he quickly stops, realizing that he needs to slow down. In the next scene, Guangek observes himself walking across the wire with light and bouncy footsteps. Seeing him in this state, he understands that he must increase his pace gradually. He recalls the day when the stick teacher watched him with amusement, finding him more entertaining than the video she was previously engrossed in. She made him run the single-line setup all day long with a bar. The following day, his mother arrives to pick him up. Guangek bids farewell to his teacher, who mentions that she will see him again next week. While in the car, his mother asks why she is putting him through such training. Gwang-ik replies that she can't bear to see him constantly getting beaten up. Hearing her words, Gwang-ik is taken aback. The teacher emphasizes the importance of utilizing his body gracefully and mentions that he has 2 weeks. Startled, Gwang-ik wonders who this teacher really is. He muses to himself that if his friends were here, they would pass out from laughter. Even in high school, his nickname was One Punch Man. Nevertheless, given the current situation, he decides to continue working out. He believes that when he eventually joins the UDT, he can be of assistance and not lag behind. Returning home, Gwang-ik enjoys the meal his mother prepared. After eating, his mother asks if he's satisfied, noting how much he had eaten. Calmly, Gwang-ik responds that he has come to appreciate the value of her cooking after 4 days. However, he realizes something and calls out to his mom, expressing his desire to learn how to cook. Momentarily surprised, his mother listens as he explains that being a sexy male cook is a trend these days. He asks her to teach him so that he can cook for his future wife. Hearing the term sexy male cook, his mother remarks that it's not a bad idea. She playfully adds that with his physique, though before learning how to cook, she says he should focus on the being sexy part. After consuming a large amount of food, Gwang-ik displays a satisfied expression on his face, though his stomach is slightly bloated. He acknowledges his mother's reliability as always. She then earnestly advises him to not solely focus on his shapeshifter physique and indulge in eating all day, but instead manage his body. Despite her words, he insists on learning how to cook during the first week. Eventually, his mother agrees and Gwang-ik cheers with excitement, realizing that the food issue is now resolved. As for further training, he ponders what they will do next week. Will it be the same or something entirely new? He wonders if it will be even more challenging than before. Meanwhile, in the forest, the stick teacher can be seen with a sinister smile on his face as he sharpens a machete, hinting at a potentially intense upcoming training session. In the next scene, Gwang-ik finds himself back in the mountains with the stick teacher. After a 4-day break, the teacher informs him that the previous training was merely a basic course offered separately from the entry requirement. In other words, the blade setup and cliff diving are now mandatory courses. Despite the painful aspect, Gwang-ik finds this course better because it ends quickly. He rises from the ground covered in blood and unable to open one of his eyes. The stick teacher yells at him to come up if he's finished. Gwang-ik realizes that the problem is that this is just the basic training. The teacher explains that part of immortality is regeneration, showing a gun and mentioning that being shot is fine as the bullet either goes through him or he pushes it out. He adds that it takes time to regenerate an amputated limb. Gwang-ik understands the importance of avoiding knives rather than guns. Seeing the teacher swinging a machete, Gwang-ik asks why he removed the blade. The stick teacher asks for his thoughts and mentions that he thought Gwang-ik was smart. Gwang-ik realizes that this training is a continuation of the blade setup, focusing on avoiding the blade. He wishes to refuse this reality but is faced with the teacher taking a stance with a machete and instructing him to deflect it. With a terrified look in his eyes, Gwang-ik barely manages to dodge the teacher's implied strikes. He tries to jump forward to increase his attack speed, but the teacher explains that the goal is to avoid major injuries by taking minor ones instead. The teacher notes that Gwang-ik seems somewhat athletic, so he will start easy. The teacher swings the machete again, creating large wounds on Gwang-ik's body. Gwang-ik realizes that he will have to get hit by the blade in various places, sustaining multiple injuries. He has no choice but to accept. The teacher rushes towards him once more, inflicting more injuries on his body. Gwang-ik tries to control his breathing and reminds himself that he has already completed the blade setup. As the wounds on his body begin to heal, Gwang-ik sees a determined look in the teacher's eyes and they continue the training. The teacher relentlessly slashes at him, causing his blood to spray through the air. Gwang-ik kneels on the ground, covered in wounds, attempting to regenerate his injuries. The teacher, too, is tired. The stick teacher explains how anemia is one of the Immortals' worst weaknesses. In the middle of the pain, Gwang-ik jokingly asks if the Immortals carry blood packs for blood transfusion in the battlefield. The teacher emphasizes the importance of stopping bleeding beforehand, surprising Gwang-ik as he realizes that they are actually serious and not joking. The teacher suggests taking a break to eat, and Gwang-ik volunteers to be the cook for the day. He takes out a variety of ingredients and starts preparing a meat sauce spaghetti. Remembering his mother's advice about cooking flavorful food, he adds plenty of sauce. As they enjoy the meal, the teacher comments briefly before handing Gwang-ik a dish and mentioning its name. Gwang-ik expresses his enjoyment of the food despite his sensitive taste buds as an immortal. The teacher reveals that cooking is a form of training for developing the sense of taste, leaving Gwang-ik surprised to learn that even cooking has its training aspects. He acknowledges his understanding and suggests that the teacher should eat slowly. The following day, the teacher proposed adding one more training session. Wang Ik is momentarily surprised as the teacher, holding a mashi, approaches him. Without warning, the teacher swiftly thrusts the blade into Wang Ik's body, causing him immense pain. Wang Ik lets out a cry of agony, clutching his abdomen and attempting to stop the bleeding. As his body trembles, the teacher instructs him to endure, explaining that organ regeneration takes time. The teacher emphasizes that basic strength training is essential. Unable to focus on the teacher's words, Wang Ik wonders how he couldn't dodge the attack and how the teacher's movements were completely undetectable. Despite the pain, he questions the teacher about it. With a smile, the teacher replies that it's about concealing one's intentions and energy. He explains that if an opponent is highly sensitive, one must know how to hide their energy. Wang Ik persists, still trembling, asking how the teacher accomplished such a feat. However, the teacher remains cryptic, refusing to disclose the details. Seeing the situation, Wang Ik exclaims that if the teacher is going to shoot him, he should at least inform him beforehand. Hearing his shout, the current teacher responds, saying that he can hear him. Moments later, the teacher is surprised to see that Wang Ik's injuries have almost healed. In response, Wang Ik asks the teacher to stab him so he can regenerate. The teacher explains that they have already tried that. Surprised by the suggestion, Wang Ik expresses his desire to learn how to hide his energy. 2 days later, we see him in the log teacher's training area. As the elevator doors open, Wang Ik steps onto the gym floor and calls out to his teacher, letting her know that he has arrived. Unknown to him, the log teacher stands nearby, holding a pistol. Without warning, she shoots the gun, narrowly missing Wang Ik's head as the bullet embeds itself in the wall. The teacher explains that it's a modified gas gun with specialized bullets. She continues to shoot at him, instructing him to dodge the bullets. With sweat rolling down his face, Wang Ik smiles, realizing that this woman, the log teacher, is dangerous. He understands that getting hit will cause damage to his body. She advises him to find cover or run fast enough to make it difficult for her to aim. She shares tips, asking him not to run in a straight line but to zigzag instead. She emphasizes the importance of not letting the opponent predict his movements. Continuously shouting techniques, she advises Wang Ik to change direction and use tension to lift his body if he gets caught in a difficult position. Despite his efforts, Wang Ik realizes that he's getting hit by some of the bullets. Seeing the marks left by the bullets, another teacher shouts at him, asking him not to get hit, as even a single hit can be devastating. The teacher explains that if Wang Ik is going to get hit, he should position himself where it won't cripple him. Hearing this, Wang Ik thinks about the importance of preventing mobility loss. His training with both immortals and shapeshifters has taught him that their fighting styles are tailored to their respective traits. Instead of focusing on fighting, the training emphasizes survival in any given situation. Immortals need to be more careful of weapons like knives, which can cause widespread damage. Guns, despite their shorter range, pose a greater threat. On the other hand, shapeshifters welcome knife attacks, relying on their reflexes and strength to swiftly counter. Their calculated movements aim to avoid injury. Shapeshifters cannot regenerate, so their actions are calculated to minimize harm. After the training, the floor is littered with ball bearings. Wang Ik sits on the floor as the teacher declares the training session over. He wonders how they are going to clean up the room after all this. While seeing the mess, Wang Ik thinks about the physical training being preferable to senselessly injuring himself. As he walks across a wire, Wang Ik suddenly senses an ominous presence behind him. Reacting quickly, he jumps forward, effortlessly clearing the entire length of the wire. Turning around, Wang Ik's face shows a mixture of realization and fear. He sees only his female teacher standing behind him. Witnessing his remarkable reaction, the teacher, wide-eyed, asks how Wang Ik was able to sense that. Looking at his teacher's surprised expression, he asks her in his shaky voice, "What was that?" She explains that it's called the bloodthirst, and she now understands that he was able to sense it the first time. He tells her not to do it again, speaking that it felt like his heart was going to burst, and how he didn't like it one bit. She replies that it's okay once you get used to it, and if one has something similar, it gets easier. Saying this, she releases her bloodthirst once again. With wide, astonished eyes, Wang Ik continues his training as instructed. Surprisingly, after just 2 days, he manages to avoid falling to the ground while running on the wire. He has discovered a method to withstand the teacher's bloodthirst. While holding onto the wire tightly, he focuses his heightened immortal senses on perceiving the sensation of bloodthirst with all 5 senses. He then utilizes his 6th sense to stabilize his lower stomach, making it somewhat manageable. Observing this, the female teacher is surprised by his ability. His training sessions continue to alternate between shapeshifter and immortal training. The immortal training, akin to a punishment from hell, involves not only regeneration but also training with axes, spears, arrows, and traps. Special attention is given to the traps, as stepping into one would cause terrible pain and impair logical thinking. The teacher emphasizes that continuous physical pain poses a greater threat than mental challenges. To adapt, Gwang-ik even consumes poison as part of his training. Shapeshifter training follows a similar path. He starts by incorporating weighted belts and vests, gradually adding weight with sandbags. He tapes weights to his wrists and ankles, enhancing his movements. He also practices dodging bullets and maneuvering through fire. Additionally, he engages in strength training using dumbbells. Naturally, changes occur throughout his training. During his father's 10-day business trip, Gwang-ik recalls a moment before his departure. His parents playfully discuss whether his mother wants to see him while he's away. His father reassures her that they will FaceTime every day, while the two of them flirt with each other. Gwang-ik awkwardly stands by. In addition to enduring injuries all over his body, the stick teacher also instructed Gwang-ik in conventional weapon wielding and martial arts. The teacher assured him that he would quickly learn how to use a gun, as his shapeshifter abilities and reflexes would aid him. On the other hand, the log teacher focused on teaching him how to shoot a gun. She mentioned that he could learn martial arts on his own, suggesting that watching a few instructional videos would suffice. She emphasized that shooting required the use of one's senses, which Gwang-ik, an expert in mortal special senses, found relatively easy to grasp. 2 months passed by swiftly, and one day upon entering his house, his father asks if he was at the gym. Gwang-ik confirms and contemplates how a week-long break from intense training is making him yearn for exercise. He ponders that his body craves the sensation of pain, hoping that isn't the case. His father remarks that he is remarkably strong despite being his son, eliciting a positive response from his mother. They lovingly banter, with his father attributing Gwang-ik's traits to his mother. While undressing and looking in the bathroom mirror, Gwang-ik gazes at his body and wonders why he can't find a girlfriend. He contemplates his standards, deeming them not excessively high, and expresses a desire for someone cute, mature, beautiful, skilled in cooking, and possibly sharing similar interests. Reflecting on his expectations, he realizes that, unbeknownst to him, his standards may be quite high. At that moment, his mother's phone rings, prompting her to inform her husband that she's going to see a friend for a while. Surprised by her sudden outing, his father comments on the stress high school senior's face. As his mother leaves, Gwang-ik's father's phone also rings, and after a moment, Gwang-ik enters the living room, calling out for his mother. However, he discovers that neither of his parents is present. Sitting on the couch, he picks up his phone and notices a message from his father containing a location, indicating that the test center is nearby and urging him not to be late. He reflects on his friends questioning why he isn't planning to attend university after taking the SAT. Some of his friends are surprised to hear that he has no intention of applying, and a few even label him as arrogant. However, he doesn't feel ashamed for not utilizing his good grades. He never had the intention of going to college in the first place. His path was determined 9 years ago when he witnessed the heroic figure known as Hughes in action. Crushed under the debris of a collapsed building, he saw Hughes fighting the invading forces, which inspired him to aspire to be like him. Recalling that pivotal moment, he contemplates how his mother would be upset if she knew. She had always hoped for him to lead a normal life, but he wonders where his mom went. In another scene, we see the mother walking outside a convenience store. The female trainer from before approaches her, inquiring about the decision she made when she left. His mother responds that she had to meet with some students who live in the nearby neighborhood. They sit under an umbrella, and the teacher asks if his mother isn't curious. His mother asks about what, and the teacher mentions her son and how she hasn't asked about him even once. His mother explains that she wants him to do reasonably well, considering he is a human shapeshifter mix who usually lacks half the capabilities of a normal shapeshifter. She admits that her anxiety prevented her from asking about him. Meanwhile, in another building, Gwang-ik's father stands inside during a phone call with someone. The person on the other end of the call questions if his father is serious. In response, his father asks if they want him to throw them into the Pacific Ocean with their limbs severed. The other person asks if his father genuinely doesn't know, suggesting that they haven't been in contact since he thought Gwang-ik's father didn't wish to talk to him. The person mentions that Gwang-ik is an irregular. Upon hearing this, Gwang-ik's father is taken aback. While back with his mother and the log teacher, his mother continues conversing with the teacher. She emphasizes that her son doesn't have to be exceptional or even good, but she desires her son to be capable of defending himself against mad scientist groups or similar threats. Mentioning the existence of such groups, the female teacher explains how these villains attempt to combine different special species in order to create something superior, amplifying their powers. She remarks on the bizarre nature of these experiments. Gwang-ik's mother then recounts how these mad scientists ended up producing grotesque monsters by merging both parents' powers. Consequently, there was only one conclusion: either one is an immortal shapeshifter or metahuman. Procreating with a human weakens the special species bloodline. The female teacher adds that she must consider herself fortunate. Curious, Wang X's mother asks what she means by that. The teacher responds, stating that she hit the jackpot with her son. Shifting to the other scene, Wang X's father expresses surprise upon learning that his son is an irregular. He proceeds to ask with the other person if his son is more than a quarter in terms of special species blood. Meanwhile, the female teacher informs Wang X's mother that their son's capabilities aren't just good but excellent, and he possesses exceptional potential. Hearing these words, Wang X's mother feels a mix of pride and surprise, urging the teacher not to use such terms. The teacher emphasizes that Wang X is not only intelligent and talented, but has even mastered the wild bloodthirst. Wang X's mother is astonished, her eyes wide open. Both parents engage in conversation with the other party, cautioning them that they will face consequences if they are lying. In response, the conversation partners assure them that they speak the truth. Wang X is indeed talented and a genius. Hearing these confirmations, both mother and father simultaneously exclaim the same sentence, proud of their son, their smiles bright and wide.